Welcome back, imagination connoisseurs. I'm Lana, and this is Lana Yuen Reviews, exclusively on the BROOD Network. Today, we're reviewing 1979's The Brood. I'll admit, I'm somewhat of a newbie when it comes to David Cronenberg films. Before I started this journey into classic cinema, I only knew of him as a director that horror movie buffs just go crazy for. I might have seen his face in some smaller acting roles that he's had over the years, but I wouldn't know it. The one Cronenberg movie I did see was one of his later works called A History of Violence, which I really enjoyed, but I had no idea it was his. Although looking back at the slower pace and the jarring cuts to the extreme gore, I can kinda see it now. It was actually the episode of Rick and Morty where they travel to the Cronenberg universe that clued me in to what I might be missing in Cronenberg films and inspired me to dive deeper. So after a triple feature of Videodrome, The Fly, and Dead Ringers, I found what I've been missing: a unique brand of scientific and sensual fascination, a merging of flesh and technology. Something unique and something I'd never seen before. The Brood stars screen legend Oliver Reed as the unconventional Dr. Hal Raglan, Samantha Eggar as the estranged mom and mental patient Nola Carveth, and Peter Dinklage's doppelganger Art Hindle as the aloof father Frank. It's both written and directed by horror legend David Cronenberg and scored by his longtime collaborator, the composer Howard Shore, who was the mastermind behind the theme of Lord of the Rings. Neat. The Brood is about a man whose institutionalized wife is receiving the VIP treatment of an experimental therapy administered by a mad but, my god, well-built psychologist. A string of murders involving Dinkelganger's immediate family sends him on a mission to uncover the strange truth about psychoplasmic therapy before his daughter becomes the next victim.
Psychoplasmics is the ultimate therapeutic device.
Why is it called The Brood? Great question. Too bad I can't answer that without completely spoiling the plot. So before we get any further, this is your last warning that this is indeed a spoiler-filled review. So if you're a Cronenberg fan, The Brood is only like 90 minutes, and I highly recommend it. And with that, please, have a seat. Group therapy is now in session. Inspired by his own real-life custody battle, Cronenberg crafts a film that has been categorized as divorce horror, diving deep into the issues of mental health and the misery of co-parenting. The unraveling of a marriage is such a common experience, it actually lends realism to the characters before things start to get a little weird. I can see The Brood being one of those films that film students like to pick apart and dissect, looking for hidden meaning within. At the start of the film, we see Dr. Raglan doing a demonstration with one of his patients, a live psychotherapy session. It was so intensive, I actually thought it was supposed to be an immersive acting class. It really draws you in. His calm, commanding voice and methodological approach to his patient's psyche is very hypnotic. And when welts begin to appear on his patient's face, I actually thought his head might just explode. I mean, that's always a possibility in a Cronenberg movie, isn't it? That feeling of walking along a razor's edge, it lasts the entire movie. Even in those small moments, there's always a sense of uneasiness, like everything could just unravel if you exhale a little bit too hard. Oliver Reed is fantastic here. He has this Captain Kirk way about him, and his voice is so soothing, it makes him perfect for a therapist.
It's Daddy.
I sort of rolled my eyes at how cookie cutter he seemed at the beginning, you know, a mad doctor with grand ideas and full of ego. So I was very surprised to find him more relatable and vulnerable as the movie progressed. He was basically dealing with a supernatural being and nobody knew. While we only get Nola in smaller doses, I found all of her scenes to be incredibly engaging. She really portrays that whole crazy but I'd hit it blend of wife and psycho girlfriend just perfectly. The perfectly coiffed hair, the crazy eyes, the soft voice, and the excess baggage. One moment, she's a wrathful god commanding a horde of vicious, angry children, and the next, a doting, caring, loving mother. All maternal instinct. And when we do get that final reveal, that shit goes wild. One of my favorite side characters was that former patient of Dr. Raglan's who's living in that halfway house in the woods. He felt like a lost patient who just wandered off the set of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. When he reveals that scrotum-esque growth under his neck, that was a big whoa, Cronenberg moment that I was mentally just not prepared for at all. And that's the first time you really feel the physical danger of this experimental psychology. However, the danger presented by this experimental psychotherapy is nothing compared to the threat of the brood. When we get our first look at this mysterious creature, it was certainly not at all what I was expecting. As Nola's mother is babysitting Candace, a tiny arm busts through a wall of this totally thrashed kitchen, and a small wrinkled hand grabs a meat tenderizer. This small person, creature thing is dressed and sized much like young Candace herself. So it's a shock when it just suddenly pounces on Grandma and beats her to death. It's fucking awesome. I had no idea what I just watched. Was it Candace's secret sibling? Was it Candace herself? Was it a dwarf living in the walls? Was it somehow Nola in her daughter's clothes, somehow smaller, escaped from the institution? Was it a bunch of evil Oompa Loompas? Was it an insane Teletubby come back from the 90s to exact revenge? I have no idea. All obviously fantastic theories, and I desperately needed to know which one was correct. I was so hooked. And I stayed hooked for the entire 90 minutes because the creature remained a mystery for almost the entire film. It wasn't until the very near end that Dr. Raglan reveals to Frank what the creatures really are. Physical manifestations of Nola's repressed anger that she births in a sack. And they all look like Candace. Hence the brood. It's a pretty insane visual that will stick with me forever. It's probably so striking because the FX have been so minimal throughout. So when you do get that final scene, it is very Cronenbergian. When she lifts her giant sweater to reveal her external embryonic sac that's attached to her abdomen, I was already gagging. And then she bites into the sac, exposing her baby, gnawing away at the membrane like the shell of a fucking jelly bean, and then just cleans it like a mother dog that's just given birth. It's slowly licking away the embryonic fluid and blood and just it is so fucking gross. Oh my god. And then the horrific look on Frank's face, coupled with Howard Shore's bombastic score. It's a classic horror moment that is still talked about to this day. 50 years later. Our protagonist, Frank, while serviceable, is really not that exciting to watch. It's actually kind of a shame we spend so much time with him, really. Divorce is no picnic, but even with his in-laws out of the way, he's just too sad. I really wanted more range of emotion from him, like we get from Nola, to really make his character pop. The brood was just a little disappointing once their faces were revealed. They looked a little fake and stiff, like masks from a Halloween store. The cameraman definitely knew and kept it wide as much as he could, relying on grunts and groans to convey the sinister nature of all these little people creatures. I can understand budget constraints, but they didn't have that fleshy Cronenberg style that I was expecting. How about nipple eyes or dildo tongues or whatever crazy weird shit they were thinking up in the late 70s? And while the kills fit the broods with their tiny hands and their short stature and their limited resources, I wasn't a huge fan of all the death by bludgeoning. As a horror fan, I prefer a little bit of variety in my violence. The kid creatures just grabbed whatever was nearby and mindlessly swarmed their victim. What a sad end to the brilliant mind of Dr. Raglan. Again, it fits. They're the embodiment of rage. Just grab whatever and go crazy. But, you know, other tiny killers, they seem to have more fun with just a little bit of creativity.
Good night, asshole.
For being one of Cronenberg's earlier works, a bit on the short side, a tad dated, and lacking the budget of his newer films, its compelling storyline and themes of divorce and child custody are timeless and definitely uniquely presented. For Cronenberg fans and horror fans in general, I highly recommend this one. So what did you think of The Brood? Does it hold up? And what's your favorite Cronenberg film? I'd love to get your thoughts in the comments below. And until next time, see ya. I didn't read the rest of the script, so I don't know what I'm about to say. Merging tech and genitals. What? I found what I'd been missing. My voice was like, wee! Doing a demonstration with one of his parents? A live psychotherapy session. Oh, so come on down.